Hi, my name is Lloyd Chapman, and I'm president and founder of the American Small Business League. My blog this week is titled, Has the Mainstream Media Unwittingly Helped the Government Cheat Small Businesses? Well, I have to admit, I put the word unwittingly in there just at the last minute because I think it sounds, like I'm a conspiracy nut. But over the weekend I was surprised, by the way, and when I went online I found a lot of people that feel the way I do. But let's talk about this issue. So every day for 10 years, the federal government has given small business contracts to some of the biggest companies in the world. It's been reported by ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN. It's been in every major newspaper in the country. But there's one thing missing. No journalist has ever questioned the government's excuse. This is happening. Anomalies, they say, miscoding, computer glitches, and the latest CBS Boston story you can see on YouTube, simple human error. Let's talk about that. So a government contract, there's a blank that says, are you a small business or a large business? It's like flipping a coin, heads or tails. It's either small or large, heads or tails, left or right, up or down. So a true pattern of anomalies, like a data entry error, half the time when you make an error, which I would think would be maybe one time out of 100, you would accidentally report an award to a large business as a small business award. And then the other half of the time of a true anomaly, true computer glitches, you would report an award to a small business as a large business award. But that's not the pattern we see here. The pattern we see here, the anomalies only divert contracts to large corporations, only report contracts to large corporations as small business awards. And the anomalies always divert federal small business contracts to large corporations. So it's not an anomaly. But it's interesting, in a decade, no journalist, not one ever, has ever questioned that. And it's interesting, by the way, that the anomalies just happen to inflate the government's percentage of awards to small businesses and help the government misrepresent, the true volume of contracts to small businesses. The anomalies just happen to randomly make it look like the government's hitting the 23% small business goal. So I would love to see some real journalists write this story and ask somebody from the SBA, about these anomalies and why they're always the other way around. Clearly, it's not an anomaly. The other excuse is they say small businesses outgrowing their size status. Well, that's great. We want small businesses growing to large corporations. Except federal law says when you outgrow the size standard, you're no longer a small business. Federal law is very clear on that. So there's no law that says you can grow from a small business to a large business and stay and keep that status. You can keep the contract, but the government can't report the award to your company as a small business award anymore. That's in the law, the Small Business Act. The last excuse they use is large corporations buying small businesses. Well, you don't have to be an expert in federal contracting law to figure out what the law says, what happens when a large business buys a small business. Can you guess what the law says? Yeah. The law says when a large corporation buys a small business, you're no longer a small business. That's the law, Small Business Act. Actually, the Small Business Act defines a small business as being independently owned, not dominant field, and having no more than 15 employees. And yet every day, for a decade, the government has diverted small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. And so be very clear, this is not an anomaly, and no statute in federal law would allow a Fortune 500 firm or a foreign-owned company to be a legitimate small business. It's not in the law. I acknowledge the fact that the SBA and the GSA have adopted policies that allow them to report awards to Fortune 500 firms as small business awards. But that's not what the law says. So those policies are essentially illegal. And I personally consider those policies to be fraudulent. By the way, the truth of all this can be found in the investigations by the SBA Inspector General. Report 514, 515, 516. Report 516 says large corporations get small business contracts illegally by making false certifications and improper certifications. Report 514 said the Small Business Administration was trying to inflate the numbers. And, GA Report 10108, let's close with that, says this. By failing to hold firms accountable, the SBA and contracting agencies have sent a message to the contracting community that there is no punishment or consequences for committing fraud. Sounds to me like the General Accounting Office is accusing the SBA of encouraging people to commit fraud. So I'd love to see a legitimate, honest journalist write this story and tell the truth for the first time in a decade. I'm Lloyd Chapman, President of the American Small Business League, and thank you.